The rain had not stopped since the funeral ended. Heavy drops beat against the tin roof of the small house, and every gust of wind rattled the loose shutters like a cruel reminder that nothing in Emily's world was safe anymore. She sat on the edge of the worn-out sofa, her little legs dangling, her fingers gripping the old teddy bear her mother had once pressed into her arms on a brighter day. It smelled faintly of lavender, the same perfume her mother used to wear. That scent was the last thread tying her to a love now buried in the cold ground. The living room was dim. A single bulb buzzed overhead, flickering every few seconds, throwing shadows across the peeling wallpaper. On the floor, muddy footprints tracked in from the cemetery. Emily's black dress clung to her small frame, soaked and heavy. Her shoes squished with water each time she shifted nervously. She was only 8 years old, but in that moment she felt older, too old for the kind of fear pulsing through her chest. Across from her stood Mark, her stepfather. He wasn't dressed in mourning anymore. The tie was gone, the jacket thrown carelessly over a chair. His expression, which hours earlier had been painted with false grief for the neighbors, had hardened into something far more sinister. His eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the room before they locked on Emily. "Pack your things," he said flatly. No hesitation. No mercy. Emily blinked. For a moment she thought she had misheard him, that the storm outside had swallowed part of his words. "What?" she whispered, her voice trembling, almost lost in the roar of rain. Mark's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, his boots crunching the dirt scattered across the floor. "You heard me. Pack your things. This is my house now. And you," his lips curled, voice dripping with disdain, "you don't belong here anymore." The words cut like glass. Emily's small hands clutched her teddy bear so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her stomach twisted, and for a second she couldn't breathe. Her mother had always told her, "You'll always have a home with me." Now that promise had been buried along with her. "Please?" Emily's voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. She slid off the sofa and fell to her knees, crawling toward him. "Please don't send me away. I'll be good. I won't make noise. I'll do anything you want, just don't make me leave." Mark's eyes darkened. He looked down at her as if she were something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. He reached out, grabbed a photo frame from the nearby table, a picture of Emily's mother smiling, and hurled it to the ground. The glass shattered, the sound exploding through the room. Emily screamed softly, flinching. "Don't you dare think you can stay here," he snarled. "Your mother's gone. And with her, any reason for me to put up with you." Emily scrambled on the floor, her tiny fingers brushing against shards of glass as she tried desperately to save the photo inside. A cut opened on her hand, but she didn't care. Her mother's smile stared back at her through the broken frame, and Emily's sobs grew louder. "Please, don't hurt me, don't throw me away." Mark laughed, low and cruel. A laugh without warmth. "You think begging will save you? You're nothing, Emily. Nothing but dead weight." He stepped forward, towering above her, his shadow stretching across the floor. He reached for her arm, ready to drag her out into the storm. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for pain. And then, everything changed. From outside, tires screeched against wet gravel. A car engine roared, then cut off abruptly. A car door slammed, heavy footsteps pounded against the ground, and before Mark could react, the front door burst open with a deafening crash. A man stormed into the room. The wind followed him in, carrying rain that splattered across the wooden floor. He was tall, his presence commanding, his eyes blazing with fury. A suit clung to his broad shoulders, drenched from the storm, but even soaked through it was clear, this was no ordinary man. This was someone used to power. Someone with money. Someone who had come for a reason. Emily gasped, clutching her teddy bear tighter. She had never seen him before. But there was something about the way he looked at her, not with pity but with a strange familiarity, that made her heart beat faster. Mark's confidence faltered. His hand dropped from Emily's arm, his smirk vanishing. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. The man's voice boomed, steady and cold as steel. "Step away from her. Now." The room froze. The storm outside seemed to quiet for a moment, as if even the heavens were listening. Emily's tears slowed, confusion mixing with hope. She didn't understand who this man was, but deep inside, a small spark told her. He wasn't here by accident. Mark straightened, trying to recover his bravado. "You can't just walk in here." The man cut him off, his eyes narrowing, voice filled with authority. "Don't test me. You've done enough." Emily's heart pounded. She looked between them, her tiny chest heaving, every muscle in her body tense. She didn't know what was about to happen, but for the first time since her mother's death, she felt a sliver of hope. This stranger, this millionaire, had come storming in with something Mark could never fight: the truth. If your heart raced while listening to this moment, give this story a like, leave a comment, and share it. The next chapters will reveal secrets you won't believe. The storm outside grew wilder, rattling the windows and drumming against the roof, but inside that small living room the tension was louder than the thunder. Emily stood frozen, clutching her teddy bear so tightly her fingers ached. Mark, her stepfather, tried to keep his posture tall, but the presence of the stranger had shaken him in ways he couldn't hide. The man took a step forward. His shoes, polished even beneath the rainwater, clicked against the warped wooden floor. Every detail about him, his tailored suit, his commanding stare, the way his voice had silenced the room, spoke of power. He didn't belong in this broken house, and yet here he was, as if the storm itself had carried him inside. "I said step away from her," the man repeated, his tone sharper now. Mark scoffed, though his eyes flickered nervously. "This is my house. Who are you to come barging in like this?" He spread his arms wide as if to prove ownership of the crumbling walls. "You've got no right here." The man's gaze cut through him. "I have every right. And you know it." Emily's heart skipped. The words rang heavy with meaning, but she didn't understand them. She looked up at the stranger, her tears mixing with the rain that had followed him in. His face was stern, but when his eyes met hers, for a fleeting moment she saw something else, something that felt almost like recognition. Mark's jaw clenched. "You'd better leave before I call the police." The stranger let out a cold laugh, the kind that didn't touch his eyes. "Call them then. And tell them what? That you threw a grieving child into the street the same day her mother was buried? That you tried to erase her like she was nothing?" Emily's breath caught. How did he know? Mark's face flushed red. He moved toward the girl as if to drag her out just to prove his authority, but the man blocked his path in an instant. He was taller, stronger, his soaked coat dripping onto the floor as he stood between them like a shield. "You're done here," the stranger said firmly. "You won't touch her again." The storm cracked with thunder outside, shaking the thin glass of the window. Mark's bravado faltered. He took a step back, muttering curses under his breath. Emily's small voice broke the silence. Who are you?" she asked, her words barely audible. The man's eyes softened just slightly when he looked at her. He knelt down to her level, the scent of rain and expensive cologne mixing in the air. "Not yet," he said gently. "But soon you'll know." Emily hugged her teddy bear tighter, confusion swirling with a fragile hope she didn't dare believe in. All she knew was that, for the first time since her mother's death, someone had stood up for her. Someone powerful. Someone unafraid of Mark. Mark, however, wasn't done. His voice rose, desperate and sharp. "You think you can just take her? She's nothing but baggage. She doesn't belong to you." The stranger's expression hardened. He turned his head slowly, his voice low and dangerous. "That's where you're wrong. She belongs with the truth. And the truth is standing right here." The words hit Emily like a lightning bolt, even though she couldn't fully grasp their meaning. The storm roared louder outside, as if echoing the secret waiting to be revealed. She looked at the man's face, searching for answers, but his eyes only promised that everything she thought she knew was about to change. Mark spat on the floor, rage boiling. "Get out before I—" The man straightened, towering over him. "Before you what? Raise a hand again? Try it, and I'll make sure you never set foot near her. Ever." His voice was iron. The room fell silent except for the storm. Emily trembled, caught between fear and awe. She didn't know his name, but she felt it deep inside. This man wasn't a stranger. He was connected to her somehow. He carried a secret big enough to destroy everything Mark had built on lies. For the first time, Mark turned his face away. He muttered something Emily couldn't hear, then stormed out of the room, slamming a door somewhere in the house. The floorboards rattled and Emily jumped at the noise. The man looked back at her. His expression softened, but his eyes still carried the weight of whatever truth he had come to reveal. He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small, worn photograph, one that made Emily's breath hitch in her throat. It was a picture of her mother, younger, smiling, standing beside the very man who now knelt before her. Emily's knees buckled. She clutched the teddy bear closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why do you have this?" The man placed the photo carefully into her trembling hands. His voice was quiet, almost breaking for the first time. "Because, Emily, your mother kept the biggest secret of all. And I'm here to tell you the truth." The thunder outside cracked like the sky itself had split open, and Emily's world, already shattered, was about to be rebuilt in ways she never imagined. Emily's fingers trembled as she held the worn photograph. The edges were frayed and a faint crease ran through the middle, but the image was clear. Her mother, smiling brighter than Emily had seen in years, standing next to the stranger who had just stormed into her house. The man in the photo looked younger, yet the intensity in his eyes was the same. Her breath caught in her throat. Why do you have this?" she whispered, her voice thin and unsteady. The man knelt again, lowering himself to her height. The storm outside howled as if echoing the weight of his words. "Because your mother gave it to me. Because she wanted you to know one day that you were never alone." Emily's chest tightened. She clutched the teddy bear closer, her small hands now gripping both the toy and the photograph like lifelines. Her heart raced, torn between fear and something she barely dared to believe: hope. From the hallway came the sound of heavy footsteps. Mark re-emerged, his face twisted with fury. He had a bottle in his hand, half empty, and the sour smell of alcohol filled the room. His eyes darted from Emily to the stranger, then back again. "What lies are you feeding her?" he spat, his words slurred with rage. "Don't listen to him, Emily. He's nobody. Just some vulture trying to take advantage of a little girl's grief." The man rose slowly, his presence towering once again. "You've lied enough," he said coldly. "You've fed her fear because it kept her quiet. But the truth has a way of breaking through, even in storms like this." Emily's eyes flickered between them, her heart pounding so loudly she swore they could hear it. She wanted to believe the stranger, but Mark had been the one controlling her life for so long. His cruelty was familiar, but so was his voice, the only adult voice she had known since her mother's laughter faded. Mark stepped closer, pointing the bottle toward the man like a weapon. "You think you can come in here, waving an old photo, and rewrite the past? You weren't here. I raised her." "Raised?" The man's voice thundered. "You broke her. You turned her mother's death into an excuse to hurt her. That's not raising. That's destroying." The word struck Mark like a blow, but his pride refused to bend. He grabbed Emily's arm roughly, pulling her toward him. She cried out, the photo nearly slipping from her hand. "She's mine," he roared. "She stays where I say she stays." But before he could drag her away, the stranger's hand shot out, iron-strong, gripping Mark's wrist. His voice was low, deadly. "Touch her again and you'll regret it." For a moment, everything froze. Emily's wide eyes darted between them, the storm outside screaming against the fragile walls. Mark's face contorted, rage battling fear, until at last he yanked his hand free and staggered back. The man knelt again, his tone softening as he turned to Emily. "Your mother loved you more than anything in this world. And she didn't want you to grow up thinking you had no one. She wanted you to know," his voice caught, the weight of emotion cracking through the steel. "She wanted you to know that I'm your father." The words hung in the air, heavy as thunder. Emily's world tilted. She stared at him, her lips parting, but no sound came. The photograph shook in her hand, the pieces suddenly fitting together in ways she couldn't yet understand. Mark exploded with laughter, cruel and mocking. "Father? Don't believe him, Emily. If he were your father, where was he all these years? Nowhere. He abandoned you. I was the one stuck with you, the one forced to feed you, clothe you. He's nothing but a ghost from your mother's mistakes." Emily's heart twisted. She wanted to ask, to scream, to cry out all at once. Why hadn't this man been there before? Why now? Why only after her mother was gone? The stranger's face darkened, but his voice stayed calm, controlled. "I didn't abandon her. I didn't even know she existed. Your mother kept the truth from me to protect us both. And when I finally found out, it was too late. She was already gone." His eyes glistened, but he refused to look away from Emily. "But you're here. And I won't lose you too." Emily's breath came in ragged gasps. Her teddy bear was damp from her tears. She looked down at the photo again, her mother's smile radiating from the image, caught between these two men, one cruel, one claiming to be her real father. The storm cracked with thunder so loud the windows rattled in their frames. Mark snarled, stepping closer again, but this time his movements were hesitant. The stranger stood taller, unflinching, his presence filling the room like a shield against the chaos. Emily's voice broke the silence, small but trembling with a desperate need. If you're really my father, then why does it hurt so much to believe you?" The stranger knelt again, his face softening, his voice almost a whisper. "Because the truth always hurts at first. But the pain means it's real." Emily sobbed, torn between two worlds, One built on fear, the other on a secret finally revealed. She didn't know which to believe, but deep inside, something stirred, a fragile seed of trust, waiting for the storm to pass. And she knew with every beat of her heart that this night would change everything. The storm raged like it wanted to tear the roof from the house. Lightning flashed, flooding the living room with white light for a split second, painting Mark's twisted face and the stranger's rigid stance in stark detail. Emily stood frozen, clutching her teddy bear in one arm and the photograph in the other, her heart pounding so loud it drowned out the thunder. Mark's voice broke the silence, harsh and venomous. "You think you can just show up out of nowhere, claim to be her father, and steal her from me?" His words slurred slightly, the bottle of liquor still in his hand, swaying dangerously. "You don't know what it's been like. You don't know what I've done to keep this roof over her head." The stranger's jaw tightened. "What you've done is make her life a nightmare. She deserves better than your cruelty. Better than your lies." Emily's breath caught. The air between them felt heavy, charged with something more dangerous than the storm outside. Mark laughed, loud and bitter. He smashed the bottle against the edge of the table, shards scattering across the floor. The jagged glass sparkled in the flickering light as he pointed it at the man who claimed to be Emily's father. "You take one more step toward her and I swear." The stranger didn't flinch. His voice cut through Mark's threat like steel. "If you hurt her, there won't be a place left in this world where you can hide from me." Emily whimpered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her knees shook as she stepped back, pressing herself against the wall. The photo trembled in her hand. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the shadows, but she couldn't look away. This was her life tearing apart right in front of her eyes. Mark lunged, the broken bottle glinting, but the man intercepted him with a swift movement. The sound of their struggle filled the room, furniture crashing, glass shattering, heavy breaths and curses thrown back and forth. Emily screamed, covering her ears, but her eyes betrayed her, peeking through trembling fingers. The stranger pinned Mark against the wall, his voice thunderous. "You will never touch her again. Do you hear me? Never." Mark spat, his rage unbroken. "She's mine. She's nothing without me." The words stabbed Emily's heart. She clutched the teddy bear tighter, sobbing harder, until her own voice broke through the chaos. "I'm not nothing." Both men froze. Her cry was louder than the storm, louder than the fight, filling the house with a force neither expected. Emily's chest heaved as she stared at Mark, her small frame trembling but her eyes blazing with a courage born from years of suffering. "You hurt me. You scared me. But I'm not nothing," she said, her voice cracking but determined. She turned toward the stranger. "And if you really are my father, then prove it. Protect me now. Don't let him win." The man's eyes softened, glistening with emotion. He tightened his grip on Mark, pushing him back until the broken bottle clattered uselessly to the floor. Mark groaned, his strength waning under the storm of truth pressing down on him. The stranger spoke again, his tone final. "It ends tonight." Emily gasped, her tears mixing with the storm's rhythm outside. For the first time she believed him, not just because of his words, but because of the way he stood, unmovable, like a wall between her and all the darkness that had haunted her since her mother's death. Mark struggled once more, but the fight was gone from his eyes. He spat one last curse before collapsing onto the chair, breathing heavily, his hands trembling. The stranger didn't let his guard down, but his attention shifted back to Emily. He knelt, ignoring the rain dripping from his clothes, and reached out gently. "Emily, I know it's hard to believe. I know it feels like your whole world is breaking. But I'm here now, and I promise you'll never face this storm alone again." Emily stared at him, her small hands still bleeding from the cut she had gotten earlier. She wanted to trust him. She wanted to believe in this promise that sounded too good to be real. But the fear of betrayal clung tightly to her heart. Thunder roared, shaking the walls as Mark muttered from the chair, his voice bitter and weak. "She'll never believe you. You're too late. She's mine to ruin, and nothing you do can change that." The stranger's eyes darkened. He pulled Emily closer, his arm wrapping around her protectively. "You're wrong," he said firmly, staring at Mark with finality. "Because blood, truth, and love will always be stronger than fear." Emily buried her face into his soaked coat, the photograph pressed against her chest. For the first time in so long she felt the faint pulse of safety, of belonging. And as lightning lit up the room once more, she realized the storm outside wasn't just weather. It was the world breaking apart, so something new could begin. The storm finally broke sometime before dawn. The house, Emily's house, then not her house, then maybe hers again, sat quiet in the thin blue of early morning. Floorboards still remembered footprints. A chair lay on its side. The glass from the shattered frame glittered like a field of tiny stars across the rug. Emily woke on the sofa with a blanket over her shoulders. A real blanket, heavy and warm, not the thin one Mark used to toss at her like an order. Someone had tucked the edges under her chin. Someone had checked on her more than once. She could feel that in the way the blanket had been retucked, like a heartbeat. Across the room, the man who said he was her father stood at the window, phone at his ear, voice low, steady. His suit jacket hung from a chair. His white shirt was wrinkled and still damp at the cuffs. He looked like a picture out of a different life that had stepped into hers and refused to leave. "Yes," he said into the phone. "Statement given. I'll bring her in to the station at 9 for the follow-up. Thank you." He ended the call and turned. His eyes softened when he saw she was awake. "Morning." Emily swallowed. "Is he gone?" the man said. "The officers took him in for the night. Protective orders in place." A breath. "He won't come near you again." She ran her thumb over the old teddy bear's matted ear. The ear was half torn from last night. Sometime in the dark, somebody had stitched 3 careful, crooked loops through the seam. The thread didn't match. It didn't matter. She knew whose hands had done it. "Can I ask your name?" she whispered. A corner of his mouth lifted. "Ethan," he said. "Ethan Cole." He hesitated like the second word mattered. "And if you wanted, Dad." The word hung between them, bright and impossible. Emily didn't reach for it. Not yet. But she didn't push it away either. Ethan crossed the room, crouched so his eyes were level with hers, and set a small envelope on the table. It was creased, sealed with clear tape, and marked with her mother's handwriting. "For Emily to be opened when she's ready. I found it in your mother's things years ago," he said. "She gave it to a lawyer to hold, for when the truth had a chance to be safe. He tracked me down after the funeral." He stopped, steadying his voice. "I wish I'd found you sooner." Emily stared at the handwriting she knew as well as she knew the shape of her own hands. She didn't open it. The weight of it was enough for now, the promise that the truth wasn't a hurricane but a path. "We should get that cut on your hand cleaned properly," Ethan said gently. "Then I thought, maybe breakfast that isn't from a box." He nodded toward the window where a thin ribbon of pale gold threaded the sky. "Storm's done. There's a diner on the corner. Pancakes. The kind that come with butter that melts like snow." Her stomach answered before her mouth could. She nodded and he smiled like something unclenched inside him. They stepped out into the morning. The air smelled rinsed, pavement, wet leaves, the last breath of rain leaving the earth. Ethan draped his suit jacket over her shoulders even though it swallowed her whole. It was too big, too grown up, too safe. She didn't give it back. At the diner, a waitress with kind eyes and a voice that sounded like Sundays brought cocoa with extra marshmallows before Emily had the courage to ask. Ethan ordered coffee he barely touched. He kept watching her, not hovering, just present. When the pancakes came, Emily ate carefully at first as if the plate could vanish if she moved too quickly. By the second forkful, caution gave way to hunger. Between bites she tested him. Small tests. Quiet ones. "What was my mother's favorite color?" she asked. "Lavender," he said without pause. She said it wasn't just a color, it was a smell that remembered things. Emily's fork stilled. "Where did you meet?" "In a library that everyone else forgot," he said. "Back corner. Ancient heater that hissed in winter." She laughed at a book with a title so serious it turned funny. I laughed because she did. What did she laugh like? Like the first day of summer after 10 days of rain, he said softly. The answer startled an ache and a warmth she couldn't separate. She sipped cocoa and stared at the swirling foam. Outside, a bus hissed at the curb. Inside, silverware clinked, a baby fussed, someone laughed. Ordinary sounds. Good sounds. Ethan reached into a small leather folio and slid a photo across the table. Not the worn one from last night, another. Her mother, hair up in a loose knot, a smear of paint on her wrist, her smile tilted in that secret way Emily tried to mirror in the bathroom mirror when no one was watching. Emily touched the edge with careful fingers. "I'll keep this," she said, daring him to say no. "It's yours," he said. "So am I," he added so quietly she almost missed it. After breakfast, at the small police station 2 blocks over, a woman from Child Protective Services spoke to Emily in a room painted the color of hope people think a child will believe. The woman didn't rush. She spoke like a person who had learned patience on purpose. She asked if Emily felt safe. Emily glanced at Ethan through the window, hands folded, waiting without tapping, without checking his watch, without making the air feel thinner. She nodded yes. They took photos of the cut, cleaned it properly, put a tiny blue bandage over the place that stung. Someone brought a tote bag with new socks, a soft sweater, a toothbrush. Ethan signed papers that gave his name the shape of responsibility. There were more papers to come, a hearing, a plan, a path, but the woman said the big parts were in motion. The words temporary custody sounded less temporary when Ethan squeezed her shoulder and said, "We'll walk every step together." By noon, the sky had turned a clean, higher blue. They didn't go back to the house. Not yet. There are places you leave in the past even while your shoes are still wet from them. Instead, Ethan drove her to a quiet hill where white stones stood in careful rows and the grass leaned under the wind. They found her mother without looking. Love is a compass like that. Ethan didn't kneel first. He waited until Emily did. She set the repaired teddy bear at the base of the stone. The crooked stitches looked brave in the sun. She placed the sealed envelope beside it, not to open it, not yet, but to let it sit with the one person who would understand. "I'm okay," she whispered, voice not shaking for the first time in forever. "I'm going to be okay." Wind picked up, tugged at her hair, carried lavender from nowhere. Or maybe from the place where memory and morning meet and decide to keep going. Ethan stood a step behind her, hands in his pockets like he didn't trust them not to shake. When she reached back, she didn't look, her fingers simply found his. He folded her hand inside his, careful, like promise. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a while. "Anything. Can we go somewhere that smells like new things?" She frowned at her own words, searching. "Like a store. For a coat that's mine. For shoes that aren't from a shelf in a closet that isn't home." Ethan's smile was small and fierce. "We can go anywhere you want," he said. "But first I have one thing for you." From his pocket he took a tiny locket, oval, its gold mellow with time. Inside, 2 impossibly small photographs. On the left, a younger version of her mother. On the right, a baby's face squint smiling, a hospital bracelet peeking into the frame. The edges of both pictures were worn from being opened and closed too many times. "She carried it," he said. "Then I did. I think it's your turn." Emily traced the locket's hinge with her thumb. It clicked shut with a sound so soft it felt like a beginning. They walked back to the car with the kind of quiet that holds, not the kind that breaks. On the way toward a new coat and shoes that would squeak on clean floors, Ethan drove past the house one last time. The porch sat empty. A paper notice fluttered on the doorframe. Emily didn't ask to stop. Some doors teach you all you needed to learn the first time they slammed. At a red light, Ethan glanced over. "When you're ready," he said, "we'll open the letter. We'll read it together. We'll cry if we need to. We'll laugh if your mother makes us. And then we'll decide our next good thing." He paused. "You'll lead. I'll follow." Emily watched the light turn green. She nodded, serious as an oath. "Okay." The car rolled forward. A city unspooled. Somewhere, a stranger held a door because kindness is a habit. Somewhere else, a woman told a joke to a friend on a sidewalk and both of them leaned back to let the laughter out. The world had not stopped to note that one girl had been asked to carry too much, so the world would have to be told. Step by step. Story by story. In the passenger seat, Emily opened the locket again. The baby stared back like beginnings always do, blurry, determined, small and enormous at once. She pressed the gold to her heart and let the morning in. She didn't say Dad. Not yet. But the space where the word would live felt ready. And for the first time in a long time, the day felt longer than the night. If this story found you today, if it gave you a breath when you needed one, please subscribe to Cryspire, like this video and share it with someone who needs hope. Your comments help us keep telling stories that defend the small, the silent, the brave. Thank you for being here with us.